Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. We take a look at what's going on with the Texas State Legislature. It's officially in session now. And our next guest, always a pleasure to have our next guest on, the Chancellor of the Texas Tech University System, Dr. Ted Mitchell, joining us today on the program. Chancellor Mitchell, welcome back to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing real well. Happy New Year, Chad.
Happy New Year. We're doing great. Appreciate you joining us. It is the start of the legislative session, and this is a session that's going to be, it seems like it's going to be a little bit different for the Texas Tech University. So really different for everybody, I guess, down in Austin. But maybe for the Texas Tech University system, a little bit different than how you approached the last legislative session.
Absolutely. You know, what's interesting is, Chad, the session's going to be different, as you mentioned, just in general. We've had numerous conversations, ongoing conversations with elected officials in Austin and their staff members. But as you know, they're going to keep the Capitol closed down as far as just a large number of people coming and going through the Capitol for the foreseeable future. And so at least for the first several weeks of session, most of our business is going to be conducted virtually. And then specifically for the Texas Tech system, our focus is going to be on making sure that we remain kind of laser focused on those initiatives for us that are critical for, academically and from a research perspective and from a community perspective moving forward.
Well, and so does that mean that for Texas Tech you're going to be seeking more funds, or are you just going to kind of protect what you've already got?
Well, so here's what happens when you look at this, and I'm going to talk about this in kind of two buckets. You've got your standard budget, and this is not just for Texas Tech, and it's not just for higher education. This is for every state agency. There are over 200 agencies in the state of Texas that have to do with higher education, have to do with safety, highways, infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in addition to that, you've got to keep in mind that there are 1,250 public school districts in the state. And there are 63 community colleges in the state. And this is the period of time where everybody comes to the Capitol to talk about funding. So there's the base part of the budget that is the budget that you operated off up until now from the last session. And that part of it, everybody, all agencies, will be hoping to keep that as solid as they can. And then beyond that, you have what are called your exceptional items. And this is the list of things that you do above and beyond new programs that you have that you feel are important to your area, your students, your part of the state, whatever it might be. And so you really approach this two ways. What we're going to do is, like other agencies, we want to make sure that the state folks understand we're being good stewards of everybody's money. So we'll do everything we can to keep any asks that we have of the state minimal and focused. As you know, because of COVID and because of the drop in oil prices with the Saudis and the Russians earlier in 2020, the state budget is not what it was back in 2019. In fact, when you look at it, when the comptroller came out with his first estimates last summer, he was saying that we would be maybe $11-12 billion in the hole. By the fall, they had readjusted that to be $4 to $5 billion in the hole, and when we got the final estimate last week, it was about $1 billion in the hole. So it's gotten better. The economic outlook has gotten better as the price of oil has gone up and as sales revenues have gone up, but it's still not going to be a banner year. So we just want to be respectful of the state's budget situation, and we don't want to appear as being tone deaf when we're down there asking for things.
Absolutely. Of course, one of the big wins for Texas Tech in the last legislative session was the Texas Tech University School of Veterinary Medicine. What is the status on that, and what are you kind of hoping for in this session in regards to either continued funding or really anything else?
Sure. Well, you hit the nail on the head with it. The School of Veterinary Medicine was a huge victory for West Texas and for the entire state when we got that, as was the dental school in El Paso. And so if you look at this, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be asking for continued funding of those two schools. And this was all as part of the original proposal. Keep that in mind. So when we went in 19, we asked for the funding to the kickoff funding then, but everybody knew that it would require funding for a few more sessions until you get to the point that you have the students, full enrollment in the school, so that the funding moving forward can be coming from tuition and what's called formula funding from the state of Texas. So we will be asking for continued funding, nothing new that we had not asked for last session, but we'll be asking for continued funding of both of those new schools.
When you take a look back at the last session, I mean, do you just kind of go, wow, the stars really did align? Because if you would have, if Texas Tech would have waited, one more session for this session, and of course nobody saw coronavirus coming. I mean, we're probably not talking about a dental school out in El Paso. We're probably not talking about a veterinary school, for Texas Tech. I mean, we're right. I mean, we're not talking about either of those if we had waited.
You're exactly right. COVID changed everything, and I'll tell you that had we waited until this session because of COVID, you're absolutely right. We very, very likely would not have either of those schools added on. So we got in during a session where finances were good for the state of Texas, and the community support that we've had, not just in Amarillo and El Paso, but the community support all over West Texas for these initiatives were the things that got it across the finish line last time. But you're right. Had we waited, it would be ridiculous to go down this session and try to start brand new schools given the budget.
Yeah. Visiting with Chancellor Ted Mitchell with the Texas Tech University system. Talk a little bit about the new relationship and partnership with Texas Tech University system and Midwestern State University.
Well, Chad, we're extremely excited about this. We've had conversations with Midwestern State, I guess going on for the last couple of years, and Midwestern State University of Texas is a wonderful liberal arts school in Wichita Falls. A lot of people haven't heard of it if they're not from this region, but they have tremendous programs, for example, in pre-professional programs, things like pre-med, pre-dent, things of that nature. So we have had discussions with them for quite some time about having them join our system, and those discussions have been going extremely well. So we have our internal discussions between our system and their university, but then we also have the external discussions with state representatives and senators that would be involved in making this a reality. So thus far, it's been really exciting for everybody, and we are really looking forward to having them as part of our family.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about coronavirus and how it's impacted the university system, if you don't mind. How does the health of Texas Tech, financially, how does the health of Texas Tech University look as of today?
Actually, I have to tell you, Chad, it looks good. And before coronavirus had hit, one of the things that we have been working very hard on with all four of our universities is to make sure that each of the universities put aside enough funds just so in case there was a major crisis with something. And sure enough, nobody would have predicted what happened with COVID, but because of the savings that the universities had put aside just for operational overhead, they did very well. All our universities did well going into the crisis. Now, I have to tell you that the help from the federal government on this was an absolute shot in the arm at a time that everybody needed it, because it was not just about losing revenue. There's a substantial problem from losing revenue. When you don't have students in dormitories, when you don't have students coming into your cafeterias, when you don't have students using your services, you lose money. But in addition to that, you had to spend money to make sure that you could get everything done online the way you needed to. So it was a double whammy there. But I will tell you that while obviously we would far have preferred not to have gone through what we just went through the past year, we weathered the storm well, and most importantly, we weathered the storm well with our faculty, staff, and students. We've had meetings at the beginning of this. We were having meetings literally 7 days a week about what to do and what things to focus on, and then it got to the point that we would have meetings several times a week to continue to make changes as necessary based on the data that we had. But as you know, this is like building a plane while you're flying it. But it's worked out well for us thus far.
you take a look around, you still see some arenas that are allowing some fans in, some arenas that are not allowing fans in. Same goes for stadiums.
Right.
What is your hope? What is the expectation? Maybe coming up for those fall sports again. I know we're kind of looking ahead, but with the vaccine rolling out and everything else, what is your hope to have for the upcoming football season and really fans in the stands, because that does help pay a lot of bills?
Sure does. So let me take off my Chancellor hat and put on my physician hat for just a minute. If you look at the vaccination rollout, as this continues to hit the population in general over the course of the next few months, I believe that everybody's expectation in medicine is that we will see a significant drop in hospitalization rates, in patients that are being admitted to the ICU, in patients that are being put on ventilators, et cetera, et cetera. So by focusing on those folks amongst us that are the highest risk for getting the infection, for having problems from it, I really do think that we're going to see a significant change by the end of the spring semester. So by summertime, my expectation would be that things are very different. Now, having said that, something that is not discussed very often is the fact that by having people wear masks over the course of just day-to-day activities, one of the things that we have seen is a near evaporation of influenza. And there was a report that came out of the CDC earlier this week, and if you looked at the number of cases of influenza, it is a tiny, tiny fraction of what it was a year ago at this time, because people are wearing masks and social distancing and the like. So I do believe that while the plans would be to try to start increasing numbers in places like arenas and stadiums by the fall, we may not quickly get away from people wearing face masks when they're out in public, because there's been these kind of, I'll call it a halo effect on other respiratory infections that we've seen as well.
Very interesting. When it comes to, before I let you go, we got to mention Angelo State.
Sure.
What are y'all going to be aiming for Angelo State University in this session?
Chad, I'll tell you, this is really cool. Most people don't know this. Angelo State University is one of the nation's leaders in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence because of its affiliation with Goodfellow Air Force Base. The new president there, Ronnie Hawkins, is a retired three-star general from the Air Force whose background is in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. So what we're asking for the state, for Angelo State, what we're asking from the state is to be able to establish a center of excellence with the community partners that we have down there, including Goodfellow, as I had mentioned, on increasing our capabilities in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence education. It's an extremely effective and really cool program down there. If you've never seen it, we would love to have you down there sometime and look at that thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and of course, it's cybersecurity. That's the future. Whether it's for businesses, for people
Healthcare,
personally, or
sure,
everybody. I mean, it's that is the future. Dr. Ted Mitchell, Chancellor Mitchell, we appreciate your time today, and we hope to visit with you again soon.
That sounds good, Chad. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Chancellor Ted Mitchell of the Texas Tech University Systems over at Texas Tech.